Hello friends, welcome to the techwithsoft. So today topic that we are going to cover is JPA because JPA also one of the important part when you are performing a Spring Boot operation, right? So what is how does it use? So JPA allow you to map Java classes to the database table, right? What does it means? Java classes to database table. So we know that we have a database tables where we do store data into a column information, right? And in Java we do create entity classes, right? Model classes. So this model classes will convert into a database tables. Because of that only we will use JPA. Here JPA will give a lot of advantage to us. We don't have to go manually create the tables. We don't have to manually create the primary key. So many things we have like DDL and DML operation, right? So that will perform automatically by the JPA. Okay, so they have some predefined methods that we will understand. Okay, like for example, we have a for save operation, for update operation, for delete operation, right? They have a specific method for it. The major advantage of JPA is that uh, we don't have to write manual database commands actually. Okay, they are giving a lot of features, a lot of methods. With the help of that we can perform the database operation. Yeah, if it is required some complex query, that time we will write it. That will provide some specific query language as well. That will look okay. So and Java object rows in this table, so you can work with the data in your application using standard Java object instead of SQL query, right? That means you don't have to write SQL query. Instead of SQL query, what do we write? We do write the standard Java classes, Java objects, and the Java objects, right? When the table will create, right? Like for example, I'm creating a one class, say like EMP, right? Class EMP, and I'm keeping some column here, right? Suppose ID, suppose name. I'm just giving one example, okay? ID name. So what I'm gonna write with the help of this table, I mean this class only. There is an entity class that will map one table. So then table will create by the name of employee here, right? And what could be the column of it? ID and name. So that is happening automatically by the JP itself. You don't have to go and write the create query. The guys who know the SQL, right? If you want to create table, that means we have to write create table command, right? CREATE create table employee, and we do pass some column here like first ID, right? What could be ID type? That could be int. Then we have to pass the size, right? And the second could be that name column, right? It may have n number of column, right? That everything will be created by the Hibernate itself or JP itself, right? Because we are understanding JP, so JP itself is also one advanced version of Hibernate. We will understand what is the difference both of them. Okay, so you have to understand that JP allowed to map Java classes to a database table. So this Java classes only we have to use some annotation like at entity annotation. With the help of this annotation, I will tell you that also. With the help of this annotation, this class will convert into a table, right? Where what could be the class? So table name, that class name will be the table name, and that column name of the class will be sorry, the variable name of the class, that will be column name, right? So JP allow you to map Java classes to database table and Java object to rows. Java object rows in those table. So every object, suppose here I am creating 10 objects, right? That means it will create 10 different rows. Every object will behave like one row. So you can work with the data in your application using standard Java object instead of SQL query. It is essentially acts as a bridge between object-oriented Java code and a relational database, right? So we have a no, right? Java is a different programming language and MySQL is a different one, right? MySQL is a third-party tool, right? For it is not a built-in in Java. So if you want to connect with MySQL or Oracle or any database language, right? We have to use any kind of bridge actually. So who could be the bridge? Like JDBC we can use if it is using plain Java, but JDBC having a lot of kind of issues where it is the database dependent, all everything, right? So instead of that, we were using JPA. So one of the framework should be perform as a bridge operation between two different languages, right? Like my database language and backend language. So that time here JPA is performing like a bridge operation between object-oriented Java code and relational database, right? It is used for DB operation, right? Database operation if you want to perform, then we have to use JPA, right? So here we have like Java plus MySQL, Java and MySQL. If you want to connect, that time we have to go with the JPA. They're having some method, we will understand that one by one. Okay. Now here when you will perform the JPA, right, it is a framework. JPA is what? It is a framework. So as I told you, right, framework is what? Nothing like a collection of predefined classes and interfaces. So this JPA does provide the predefined interface, which is a tool, right, which does help you to perform the database operation. First one is called CRUD repository, second one is called JP repository, right? That is also one of the interview questions. What are the difference between CRUD repository and JP repository? That we will cover. Okay, so here the difference between CRUD repository and JP repository lies in functionality they provide within the Spring Data JPA. Sometimes JP we do call Spring Data GP also. Both are interfaces that simplify data access layer. Data access layer, I can say in simple called DAO. In short, we do call it DAO, right? So data access layer or data access object, right? That does define this, right? So CRUD repository and JP repository both are the interfaces. JP repository is a popular one. I told you why. They are having a more flexibility over the CRUD repository, right? So JP CRUD repository also we can use, but JP repository is having a more flexibility over the CRUD repository, right? Now let's understand some method which does perform this operation. Like one is a method, first save method. That method of the JPA. JP means I'm talking about the JP repository. So these methods are a part of JP repository as well as CRUD repository, right? Save method. What save method does? It does insert. So it does fire the insert query internally. So insert query, and we know that insert query, what does it does, right? It will store record into a database, right? Find by ID. It does find the query. It will write the query which could find by ID. Find by ID means it will take one ID as a parameter. It will take ID as a parameter, and according to the ID it will return me a record. So it will write select command, right? What could be the select command? Select command with the where clause, like select star from employee where ID equal to, right? What could be ID equal to? So ID equal to something that I will pass here. Suppose I am passing here ID 101, right? Or let me pass here some variable which is having a like 101, like ID, and ID will having a some 101 value, right? So here I can write it could be 101. So this JP repository itself is having a, we will use these methods only, like save method, find by ID, find all, delete method, right? So for save, JP repository will write insert query, right? Insert into, right? Find by ID, it will write select star from employee where ID equal to. Find all, it will fire the query where we can write select star from without where clause, right? Select star from the employee. So it will return all the record for us. Delete will write the delete query, right? So these are the predefined methods of JP repository which will direct, like here I am looking save only, right? Save is method. I'm thinking it is a only object oriented programming kind of things, right? But behind that query is executing. Behind that query, behind every methods, one query is executing. That is the power of JP repository. That's why that advantage we can say that JPA does work with the object oriented programming way, but it is performing for database operation. It is used to perform the database operation, right? So JP repository is having a save, find by ID, find all, delete method that can perform this kind of query. So that could be delete query, that could be select star, right? Yeah, one thing that you have to understand, that find by ID method, right? Here we can get that data according to the ID, which is a predefined method. But suppose if you want to fetch data with any other field according to the other field, we can fetch data with according to any of the field, right? I can fetch data according to the name, I can fetch data according to the salary. Then what happened, right? That will give you one flexibility to us. We can write here find by. Let's say that example I took, right? Let's say I have a class where I took this class. Somewhere I took it, right? Okay. If it is not, let me create here. Let's have a class which is having a variable like name and salary as well. Name and salary. Now I want to fetch data according to the name or according to the salary. Then what happened, right? We can write one custom method. We can write one custom method here. JP repository having its own method, right? but we can write our own custom method that can be do this kind of operation also. So I will write find by. Find by will remain same only, and then it will map with your entity class. Like we have a name here, right? Name n should be small, so that could be find by name, and it will take name as a parameter. As simple as that, right? But find by id, these method we don't have to write explicitly. These are the predefined method from the jparepository, and we can call them directly. But if you want to fetch data with according to any of the field, like according to the salary, find by, here I will write salary as capital, right? So with the help of that, we can write the method and we can fetch data according to the any fields like that. And if it is coming with the some complex kind of things, right? Like some complex data if I want to receive, that time it does provide complex data retrieve. It does provide a one query. It's provide two type of query actually. One query it will provide JPQL, and second it will provide the native query. Okay, so that I will tell you. I will give an example how can we write JPQL and native query. Okay, so JPQL is a simple Java persistence query language, right? So and native query also. So here we will write a query. That will be in object-oriented programming form. Object-oriented programming form, right? Which look similar to what? SQL. What does it means? Similar to SQL. Let's say I have one class. Say IMP. Okay, and it is having some variable, right? What could be the variable? I can say it is having ID. It is having a like name. It is having a like salary. It is having a like address, right? So if I am writing some JPQL, how does it look? It will create a one query. Let's say select query it will write, right? So it will write select what? ID, comma, name, comma, salary, comma, address from the employee. Okay, so please understand that what is the difference between JPQL and SQL. So that is suppose JPQL. Same I will write suppose for SQL also. Same I am writing for SQL. Syntax look like the same both of them. Syntax look like the same in both of them. Then what happened here? Here ID, name and salary, address which I am taking here, right? That will be the variable name of the class in JPQL, and EMP will be the table name here. I mean EMP is a class name, not table name. So whatever JPQL query we are writing, right, that will directly map with our entity class. So that map with the entity class. So according to the entity class, right, it will create table name, it will create a column name, right? So ID, name, salary, address, that could be the column name, a variable name here in this query, and here this class name will be the table name will be the class name. If it is E capital, it will keep capital as okay. So that it's case sensitivity is not problem with the database, I mean query, right? So no problem here. We can write in capital also, we can write in small also, no problem. But in SQL, what happened, right? If I will write these things, right, that means it could be a table name and it could be a table column. Syntax look like the same only, but the difference is that here whatever variable we are writing, whatever attribute we are writing in JPQL, that will map with your model class, with your entity class, and it will map with your database table. So map with your database table directly, right? So this is the difference between JPQL and SQL, and we have one more way like native query. What is a native query? Native query is something which could be used for SQL purpose. Like for example, sometime it is happening, right? I want to write a query that could be in the SQL format. So if you want to write the query in the SQL format, right, with JPA, we have to use that native query. So that is the interview questions actually. What is the difference between JPQL and native query? So JPQL, if I will run this query directly in the database, right, may not run because it may be a possibility where this column name and my variable name are different. may different, right? May differ. So if it is differ, that means this query cannot be run directly in the database. But in the case of native query, right, it will run directly into a database, right? Because native query will be in the form of SQL, right? So if you want to write any SQL query in JPA, we can write it, but that query will be in the form of native query, right? So native query will be the SQL query, where JPQL will be a object-oriented programming query. Object-oriented programming query means I am talking here that could be that class variable name, and that could be the class name, and SQL that could be a column name of the table, and that could be the table name here, right? So that way it does perform the operation JPQL and native query, right? Then we'll understand what are the main difference between JPA repository and CRUD repository. So CRUD repository and JP repository. Basics CRUD operation. CRUD means create, read, update and delete. C means create, R means read, U means update, D means delete. Right? CRUD repository perform both operation. Right? Pagination and sorting. So pagination, you know, pagination means if you want to fetch record according to the sequence, like I have 100 record or 1000 record in my table, right? I want to fetch 10 record. That is called pagination. So it will give me 10 record first, then 10 record first, then 10 record, right? And sorting means the data will be sorted according to the ascending order or descending order. So whenever you want to fetch record from the DB, right, with a specific sort, or if you want to sort that as well, right, that time CRUD repository does not provide it, but JP repository does provide that. See here, that's why JP repository is powerful. Batch operation. Batch means fetch multiple records at the same time, multiple tables record, right? So batch operation means multiple table record if you want to fetch. That time that does not provide by the CRUD repository, but that provided by the JP repository. JP is specific method, not there in a CRUD repository, but that there in JP repository. Suitable for sample use cases, that for both is suitable, right? Suitable for complex query. Yeah, for complex query, CRUD repository is not preferable. JP repository definitely is preferable, right? So this is the difference between all JP CRUD repository and JP repository. Now let's understand the JP annotation, which does help you to create table and all. So JP repository having some popular annotation like add entity annotation. So at entity annotation, what does it do? It will create the table name with the same name of the class name. Like for example, here I created a one class, right? Like class employee. So what I will do here, I will use one at entity annotation on the top of it. What happened with this entity? This entity annotation does help you to create the table. So with this same name, it will create one table in the database. It is a mandatory annotation. If you are using JPA, we have to use entity. Otherwise, table will not create into a database. So this annotation help you to create table in the database with the help of JPA, right? So entity is a class level annotation. Second one is add table annotation. So table annotation we will use when if you want to write the table name with the other name. So I will keep here suppose name equal to say my employee, right? Then what happen? If I will use at the table annotation, then the table name will be here my EMP, not like EMP. So if you want to change the table name in your database, right? If you want to change the table name into your database, you don't want to keep the table name, same like a class name, right? Then we can use that table annotation. Table annotation is optional. We can keep or we can ignore also, but entity annotation is mandatory. We have to keep it always, right? If I will not use at table annotation, then by default entity will work and that will create the table name is like employee, right? If you want to use primary key, right? So for that we have used at ID annotation. So we know that primary key is very important and that we have to keep in the table. Otherwise, whatever data cannot be proper on it, right? So that data cannot be duplicate on it, right? So add ID annotation will help you to create the primary key in the table. So you can see here annotation itself is helping to create the table, and the table having a like different constraints like at ID annotation, right? And one more column we have, one more annotation we have a generated value, right? Generated value. So that will help you to create the auto increment field. Like for example, ID will not provide by the user, that will automatically increase by the database itself, right? Like starting from the 1 2 3 4 5 something like that, it will automatically start. We are not providing it, right? Same like we have one more annotation here, like at column annotation, at the rate of column annotation. That is used when, like normally that id will be that column name which will be created by default by the table, right? But if you want to change the name, like I want to keep it like eid, so I will pass your name equal to eid. Then what happen? The table name will be in that the column name in the table, that will be eid only. So at the rate column annotation will help you to create the table name like eid, column name is like eid. So at the rate column annotation we will use when you want to change the column name, if you do not want to keep the same as a variable name, right? So that is choice, that is depend on us. So we can keep at column annotation on the top of every, I can say, variable, right? So that could be like e-salary, or you can keep it same also, that is also fine, right? You can keep same or you can keep different. So here the table name will create by the entity annotation, okay? And column annotation is optional, it's not mandatory, right? ID annotation we can keep, it is mandatory because every table should have a primary key. If you will not keep it, right, your table will not be generated. Generated value is also optional annotation. If you keep it, it will perform auto increment values. Otherwise you can provide the value manually also, but normally we do prefer generated values, right? And then we have a name and salary and variable, right? So we can keep at column annotation. So here we can understand they having some annotation at entity, at table, at id, at generated value, at column, right? So these are the some predefined annotation, right? So in entity, what entity does, it will create the table. What table does, table does just change the name, right? At id for primary key, generated value for auto increment, column for if you want to change the column name, like that, right? So for that purpose we do use JPA annotation, right? Now one of the important part of the JPA called mapping, ORM kind of things, right? So mapping ORM is what, object relational mapping. So before that you should know what is a join operation. That is called a normal like join operation. So join operation means we are fetching data from the multiple tables, or we are inserting data into multiple tables. So that can be here happening with the help of foreign key, right? We have to use foreign key and primary key both. So foreign key will play a very important role here, right? Very important role it will play. So same thing is happening with the ORM also. So JP is a ORM tool, object relational mapping kind of tool, right? So here we have to use, suppose if I have a 2 tables or 3 tables, I want to fetch record from the 2 tables, I want to fetch data from 3 tables, right? That time we have to use mapping. That time we have to use mapping. Then it could be performed in many ways, like one-to-one mapping. One-to-one means what? That means if I have a 2 table, suppose I have a 2 table, one table name is like suppose student, okay, and second table I have a suppose like mobile number, or I can say like Aadhaar number, okay, let's say Aadhaar number. Instead of a student, let's say employee here. We know that, right, one employee cannot have a more than, so we have a 2 table, one is an employee table and second one is Aadhaar table. Aadhaar table will having Aadhaar number, employee table having an employee information, right? These are the 2 different. Suppose here I have like employee information, but there is no other information, but Aadhaar having other information. And if you want to map both of them, if you want to fetch both of the table data, right, please understand employee and Aadhaar are 2 different tables which are having a 2 different information. So with one employee we have one Aadhaar, with one Aadhaar we have one employee. It cannot be possible one employee can have more than one Aadhaar, okay, like, or UID I can say, like unique ID. Instead of Aadhaar, let me take UID, okay, unique ID. That could be any ID look like that, okay. So if we have one particular ID with a one particular objects, then it could be one-to-one mapping, or that could be one more scenario, like if you're talking about the employee, right, employee will having a one laptop, company assign one laptop. So if you want to company map it, right, one employee can have only one laptop, one employee cannot have more than one laptop. So that could be scenario of one-to-one. One-to-many scenario, many-to-one scenario, that could be used like in both same only, but one for one side, second for second side. What is the meaning of one on second side? So I'm taking that, like suppose one have an employee having a like suppose address. one employee will having a, so there are the two different table, employee table and address table, right? One employee, one to many, what many address. If one employee having a many address, that time from the employee side, that could be one to many. From the many to one, if I will say address side, many address having a for one employee, that time it could be many to one. So that is a kind of unidirectional, bidirectional kind of mapping, right? So that you have to understand here. One to many means employee to address, and many to one means address to employee, right? So that is three type of mapping, but many to many mapping is required when we have many to many information. Like for example, many employees will having a many what? Hobbies. Or we can think on what, okay, let's take this one only, right? Hobbies. So we know that one employee can have a hobbies, many hobbies, and these hobbies can be a part of, like for example, playing cricket. Playing cricket may be a possibility of multiple employees to play the cricket, right? So many employees having a many hobbies, but many hobbies could be part of the many employees also, right? Many hobby could be part of the many employees. So that time it could be performed many to many relationship. But one thing you have to understand, the database structures also, that is one of the important part. Okay, in one-to-one mapping, how many table will create? Only two table will create, employee table and laptop table, right? And both will map. All the three mapping, it will perform only those tables which is having a like relationship on it, like employee address, like here also in address employee. But in many to one extra table will create, which could map actually both of them, right? So in many to many, how many table will create? Here I can say three table will create. One is the employee table, okay, second could be hobbies table, and third will be the table which will map both of the data, which could be employee hobbies, kind of that, right? So that could be the one of the table which will having a both of the information, hobbies information and employee information, right? So that is only happening with the many to many because it is very difficult to map it, right? So that's why in many to many mapping that will create extra table, right, which could be the combination of both of the table underscore like that, right? So this is all kind of mapping that we can use, that we can perform. No worries, we will see the practical of this all the mapping with Spring Boot, but before that you should understand what kind of mapping, what is the mapping and what is the purpose of the mapping. So mapping is mainly used for kind of join operation that could be performed with the foreign key. So everything is joined in foreign key, that is taken care by the this one JPA itself, right? So before JPA, one more framework we were using, Hibernate. JPA is one of the popular ones. So here we will understand the basic difference between JPA and Hibernate. Right now people do ask, do you have understanding of Hibernate? Because Hibernate is an older one, JPA is the one latest one, right? And they have given a lot of specification, okay, over the Hibernate. So JPA will provide more abstract way means if I'm using Hibernate, right, it will require more code, JPA required less code. So that is a difference. So you can understand, JPA is a specification, Hibernate is implementation. Part of JPA is a part of Java EE or Jakarta, right? Both are there. Here you have an independent framework, right? Annotation, add entity, add ID, add table, etc., stand price. And here we have a supports JPA plus additional annotations like generic, generator, cascade, etc. So annotation could be the common in both of them, right? Portability, portable across across providers, tied to Hibernate specific features if used outside JPA, right? So if you are using outside the JPA, then it is tied with the Hibernate kind of specification. API means predefined interfaces. So it is having entity manager, entity transactions, right? It provides session, transactions and other natives API as well. So this is the basic difference between JPA and Hibernate, right? But mainly we are using JPA, right? Because JPA does all of the form of the Hibernate in the abstract form, right? So JPA is a specification and Hibernate is one of the implementation. So this is the main difference between Hibernate and JPA. So till that this session guys, that much only, okay? If you like the video, please subscribe it Okay, one more thing, let me tell you here. Whenever you want to perform this GP operation with the Spring Boot, right, we have to keep this properties as well in the properties file. So when you will create the application, Spring Boot project, right, we will get a one file called application.properties. That is the one file, right? So in the application.properties file, we do provide kind of configuration. We do provide configuration. So there we will provide this database configuration also. What does it means? So suppose if I am connecting with the database, right, MySQL database. So who has worked on MySQL database, they know that what could be the structure of the database. So in the, let's say I'm working with the MySQL, right, in MySQL. So in MySQL, what could be, first I will write database. Inside database, what do we write? We will write tables. We will write tables, right? And then we will having a MySQL will having a some username and password, right? That could be whenever you want to use, right? So every MySQL will having a username and password. So here we have to provide UID, that means ID and password, right? So indirectly what happened, right? Java want to connect with your Hibernate. Java want to connect with your Hibernate. So that time you have to provide your user ID and password, right? If you want to connect manually. But if you want to connect with Spring Boot also, that time also we do provide this user ID and password, right? So you can see here username and password. What are this username and password? Username and password is nothing like a name of that username and password which you have given for the database. So I kept here root only. If you have a different one, you can provide them. If you will provide a wrong password, that time it will not work. It will definitely ask you, please provide the same password, right, whichever you have in your database. And till that, here in the URL, that could be the common. So JDBC MySQL, that is called URL, right? Localhost 3306, it's a port on that your MySQL will run, right? But that will be changed. That will be changed. Suppose I'm using MyDB, you will use maybe different database, right? Because database can create by the developer. If you do not know about how to create database in data, right, in the MySQL, how to log in on it, how to install it, right? I have created one specific video for it. You can go there and look how to create database, how to use database, how to log in on it, right? Everything I have explained on it. So you can go on my playlist and look on that. What is the database operation we can perform, right? So this is the kind of three things. And JP Hibernate auto DDL update, that is also one of the important part. Okay, so what is happening with the update, that also I will cover in later, not now. Okay, that is also one of the important. And so SQL here I am keeping like true, so it will show us SQL query also. So this kind of configuration, if you are connecting with the Spring Boot, we have to provide in the application properties file, right, where this MyDB, root and root, these three will be definitely changed if you are having your own database. So it will provide your own username, your own password and your own database. Rest everything look like same only. Yeah. So that is about this video, guys. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please subscribe it. Thank you.